America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, good evening. First, I would like to welcome our new principal, Kristen Withy, to her first board meeting for the Deerfield Community School. We have a fun agenda for you. All right, so our first action is minutes of August 8th. No, that's today. Minutes of May 23rd, June 6th, June 21st, and June 28th, 2018. What is the wish of the board?
Moved as written.
Second. All right, they've been moved and second. Are there any corrections on those four sets of minutes?
Yes, I had one. On the second page, it says that.
Which one?
Sorry. This is May 23rd.
Yep.
Yeah. The second page. It's right before candidate number 1.
Okay.
It says 6:45 the school board recessed, and 7:50 the school board went back into session. We did not take an hour-long recess. So I'm going to propose that we change the change of 7:50 to 6:50. Shouldn't be 7:50.
Everyone okay with that? We did not take an hour recess.
That was between candidates, but it was 5 minutes.
Any other changes, corrections? Hearing none, all in favor of the minutes as written and amended?
Aye.
Aye. Public comments.
We have 3 more minutes to go through. Am I skipping those?
I've moved them all at once, or you guys moved them all at once.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Did you have others?
I had one other one.
Okay.
I thought it was just that we were going sequentially. Sorry about that. There was also one for June 6th.
All right.
Wait, is it too late to go back to that?
Well, we've moved it.
Move to reopen it.
That would be the easiest way.
Second that.
All right. Reconsidering, reopening. June 6th, what do you have?
On the June 6th one, there was. Let me get back there. There was the bullet just said in the minutes. It said Jack's driving school, and I was just asking, is it worth adding a little more detail about what that discussion was about? Jack's driving school. We were providing permission to Jack's driving school to use the facilities.
So do you want to add that we extended and reauthorized Jack's driving school to use Deerfield for a 3-year period?
Please. Thank you.
You got that? Any other changes?
No, that's it.
Okay. Now, all the minutes
All this.
as written or amended. We need to vote on them, guys. Because we reopened them.
Yep.
Yeah?
Aye.
Okay, yeah. Okay, now we're on the agenda. Now we're going to move on to public comments. Mr. Burville?
Kevin Road. So, served 7 years on the budget committee and always sort of noodling around budgets. And no longer on the budget committee, but I was sort of reflecting on 7 years, what did you accomplish, what didn't you accomplish, what would you do different? And one of the refrains that we often hear is that we don't fully fund public education here. And I don't know if that's true or not true, right? We always have good-sized surpluses, often proposed budgets pass. So are we or are we not? I've certainly debated and argued about where priorities are, where that spending is, from my point of view. And one thing that I've realized is I think everybody in Deerfield really supports public education. I think we really support the school. I think there are people that would like to see more done, do more, but they don't know what it is or how to get there. And so reflecting on the the years on the budget committee, it's all but impossible for a member of the budget committee to be able to make a meaningful motion to increase funding anywhere. So not just moving money around or decreasing, but if we don't think we're fully funding, right, the question is where and by how much. And I think the problem is compounded when we get to deliberative session, because people going to the deliberative largely have not gone through the line item budget, heard all the discussion, heard all the debate, know where the bodies are buried, if you will. So if I was still on the budget committee, some of the things this year I would look to change is every year we fundraise for the upkeep of musical instruments that the school's invested in, right? So we buy music instruments for music class, and then we do fundraisers at school events to fund the maintenance of those, right? And that should be, in my opinion, that should be maintained in the budget. It's an example of maybe that's one place we're underfunding ed, right? Sixth grade environmental camp, it's an every year thing. We do a lot of fundraising around that. Maybe that should be in the budget, right? Maybe that's something that's underfunded. I don't know. Eighth grade graduation cap and gowns, right? Every year we fundraise for that. We could have a set of caps and gowns that we would simply use every year and maintain as time goes on and eliminate that fundraising. So, and we got our school list, right? We got our school list this week, and again, you know, we haven't even started the school year. We barely opened up the new budget, and we're already asking for basic sanitation supplies, right? Disinfectant wipes, paper towels, tissues. And I know we've gone round and round on this, but you know, that's one area I think we're completely underfunded. The question is, how do we move the ball forward, right? What's a potential solution so that we could have a larger discourse as a community to address this? And that's the part that's perplexed me for a long time. And I've come up with an innovative idea that I will now pitch to you. Imagine, if you will, if you produced two budgets, right? So you have to propose a budget that you think suits the needs of the school, will pass the voters, will address priorities and things that aren't such a heavy priority. You know, we let go to future times, right? And that's your job. That's what you're tasked with, and that's what you do. And then the budget committee refines it, the deliberative refines it, and the voters get to vote on it. But imagine if you had a parallel budget, right? Same line items, but with more item definition of these are the things that would be, you know, first tier really nice to have, right? These are the things we'll probably try to chip away at next year. A second tier of, you know, this would be really good, and these are things that we're letting slide a little longer than maybe we want to, that, you know, if we had the money, we would have it on a more shorter cycle of replenishment. So if you look at like a lot of the paperback books that are used in the school as reading, right, a lot of those are really beat up and tattered by the time they get replaced. And, you know, does that make a difference? Does it not? I don't know. But if there was that list of items, then the community, and if it was made public, right, then community members would have a chance to go through and look and digest and think about it. It would certainly give some insight and guidance to budget committee members that maybe, you know, feel that we're underfunding ed, but aren't really sure exactly, you know, where would you put the money, right? How much would you put in, and for what? What's the justification? You know, how do you get there? So one of the easy ones last year was art, right? So you guys are trying to keep the number, you know, reasonable. So we cut art supplies. You guys cut art supplies. The budget committee put that back in, right? They put that money back into the budget because that was something they did. But they knew it, right? They looked at your minutes. They heard, you know, Zach articulate how you guys had arrived where you were. So it was easy for them to go back and put that back. But a lot of the other stuff, they have no transparency on. And certainly people at Deliberate struggle with that. If they had that information early and often, right, that would actually allow for a much larger community discussion of where that priority spending should be, and would give people a tool set that they could actually work with to maybe move the ball forward. Unless we're fully funding ed, we don't need to do that, right? I mean, I guess that's the first decision. You have to decide whether or not are we fully funding, because if we are, then you certainly don't need to do any of that. But if there's the perception that we're sort of bare bonesing it because it's what we can get past the voters, because I don't believe it's the bottom dollar number. I know a lot of people vote that way. I know a lot of people vote that way. But I don't think the majority do. I think the majority pay more attention than we think. And it's where the money is being spent that gives them more pause to vote no on bigger numbers than the actual bigger number. And the reason I say that is usually the numbers are very close. Default versus proposed budget are usually not very far off, and they will reject a proposed budget that's very close to default. And I interpret that to mean something different than they just don't like that larger bottom number. I think they do more analysis than we give them credit for as to where the money goes. So we've been doing the same thing the same way for a really, really long time. And it just sort of, as an outsider thinking about it, I just thought maybe that might be a good approach to potentially kick around, to get more people involved to a deeper intellectual level of what's going on. I'm actually camping with my family in Pawtucket. You can't tell by looking at me right now, but we're scooting out. I'd love to stay for the rest of the meeting, but I just wanted to propose that to you because the budget season's right around the corner, right? It'll be in a blink of an eye. So thank you for your time. Enjoy the rest of the meeting, and stay out of that sun.
Any other public comments? Okay. Agenda review. We have, it looks like, an infrastructure grant vote that we need to add. That should go under immediate business. So we can do that as F, or are we, is that okay with everyone?
And on item C,
Yes.
Mr. Fisher sent an email saying he wasn't going to be here. Haven't seen Andy yet.
Item D, you mean? No.
C.
Oh, do you have a different version? Okay, sorry.
Do I?
Look at that. Excited.
Item CD.
All right.
Who knew?
So I don't know if you want to maybe just
Why don't we
push it down and then
table that and see if Andy shows up and
Okay.
deal with that. But anything else on the agenda that any board members would like to change? All right, seeing none, we will now move on to the middle school homework procedures. Staff, who is leading this one?
Right behind you.
All right. You guys want to pull chairs up and join the table, or if you have present, however you want to do it here. Should I move? I think that what chair is over there.
And I'll give you the dark version.
Yes, my agenda
I'm
was,
good at my wife.
I don't know.
it must have been updated before I,
I had asked Kathy to switch those because I thought that that C and D.
this would be much easier, yeah. Much easier. That was all it was
Software.
miss.
I had also, what else did I put in there? Hello.
Hi.
All right. So, this is your presentation. Go ahead.
So we met a couple of times over the summer and hammered out some procedures that we want to put in place for next year so that the middle school can be more unified and consistent in our expectations of kids for assessments. So the first thing that we wanted to cover with you guys is formative assessments, which we have up there, and our formative assessments in the middle school are largely their classwork and their homework. And then our reasons behind having formative assessments up there, it enhances learning, it provides a link between parent and child, the independent learning, student organization and responsibility, and our procedures allow for students to miss work if they're absent. And just a reminder that we are not giving assessments as busy work. Formative assessments included, the formative ones being where we're assessing what they know before they get their summative. So their formative assessments are usually their daily homework, their classwork, and their long-range projects. Those are usually the summative assessments. And we really want to help the students build responsibility and budget time to complete their homework. And they will be given an agenda book that helps them keep track of their assignments. And the sixth grade team really works a lot with the sixth graders on teaching them how to use those agenda books so that they can carry that through the rest of middle school. And we just ask that parents are supporting their children to help them learn those responsibility and time management skills. So we are adding in something that's not new for sixth grade, but is going to be new for seventh and eighth, so that students will have a more consistent experience in grades 6 through 8. So if a student is missing 4 or more assignments, and we are throwing all assignments under that umbrella, homework and classwork, or if they are missing a summative, which is like the big ones, in a given week, they'll be provided with time on Fridays during flex time and advisories, student support time, where they will have time to get help and get caught up on their assignments. Advisors will reach out to parents and let them know if their student is going to be receiving that student support time every week. So if parents have a question, they can email the student's advisor and find out exactly what's going on. And just as a sort of obvious, but if students are absent, they will have an opportunity to make up their work. But we want to be a little more structured with that and say 2 days of makeup time for every day that they're absent, so that it doesn't get pushed way out and forgotten about.
Hi, this is me. Summative reassessments. We have, this is kind of the policy we were running as a middle school towards the end of last year, the procedure we were running. If students receive a 1 or 2 in a summative assessment, they are eligible to reassess. So 1 or 2 basically means they didn't master the skill or didn't understand the skill, so we want to give them an opportunity to understand the skill. So we're going to give them that chance to reassess. If they complete all their formative assignments, class and homework, students will be provided 10 days to create a plan with the teacher to reassess. If they do not have a plan to reassess during that time frame, the grade stays what it is. The 1 or 2 will stay. So you're giving them a couple weeks of school time to give that opportunity to reassess. If the student does not complete all required formatives leading up to the summative, so if the student is not completing all their homework, classwork, they will not be given the opportunity to reassess on the grade. The grade will stay as is, 1 or 2. Missing summatives. This is sometimes summatives go home as an assignment, long-term projects, etc. Those are often coming back missing, or sometimes coming back missing. If a student chooses not to complete a summative by the due date, we will still give them an opportunity to make that summative up, because it will show up as a grade. You know, we hope that they gain something from that. We want them to. So we're going to give them 10 days to submit that summative in beyond the due date, but their grade they get will stay what it is. They will not have an opportunity to reassess after that time.
All right, this is me. So, academic probation. Probation reports will run every Tuesday during the school year, beginning the 4th Tuesday in September. And the advisor will be, the student's advisor will be checking those reports on Alma. The students who have received a 1 or a 2 on a summative in 2 or more classes will be placed on probation. Probation will last 5 school days, typically Thursday through Wednesday. I think we're saying typically there because there are some weeks that get a little strange with either an early release or a holiday or whatever. So typically. During this time, the students are ineligible to participate in any after-school activities such as sports, clubs, or dances. Additionally, students will use flex time and advisory time on the Friday of the probation to complete any missing or incomplete assignments, including incomplete class and homework assignments. And then additionally, students will not be penalized for a 1 or 2 if a grade is a reflection of the student's best effort and potential. And teachers will use their discretion on a case-by-case basis, and obviously that includes students on IEPs, and would have conversations with students' special education teacher as well. Zero heroes. So students who have a 100% completion rate for formative assessments in 7 out of 10 weeks will be recognized for this accomplishment at the end of each trimester. so there will be a recognition of students who are really putting that effort in. What?
I thought we had bumped that to 8, but that's 7's good.
And that's it. That's the last slide.
All right, Mr. Oxnard.
Questions?
Yeah.
So my student just finished 5th grade, so I haven't yet kind of seen all of this in action. I've heard a little bit about it from last year from other students, and this looks a little bit different from last year's policy. I guess my question is sort of thinking back, and I'm newish to the school. Can you go back maybe a little bit further back in time and sort of where did this sort of presentation of the policy come from? Can you give me some of the backstory as to how this is what process was used to end up at this kind of big picture? What is the, if you're, what I'm asking is like, why is this the policy? Where did your,
change what?
yeah, like when did you guys sit down and say this is what the policy should be? Was that recently? Was that not so recently? What's the kind of some of the backstory and where this came from, I guess, is my question.
So I think the beginning of the change, initially, we had this academic probation policy for years back when we had grades. And we also had what we called homework detention. If the kids were missing 4 or more homework assignments, they would receive a detention and have to work on them after school. We lost when we switched over to competency-based grading, and suddenly formatives became almost voluntary. The percentage of those assignments slowed down, like the completed, decreased dramatically, and the in parallel with that, their performance on summatives was also declining. Right. And so we're looking for, since we've been on, we were trying to find the techniques to inspire kids to do their work as they're supposed to do. Most kids, middle school age kids, are going to, if they don't have to, choose not to do their work, right? So looking for a little motivation, little carrot and a little stick combined type of thing. That's where we incorporate the Zero Heroes. Zero Heroes is something I think that Nick brought in, at least, or Nick and advisories brought in when he was advisor. We want to reward kids too. Because some kids aren't naturally great. They did better on their summative, so what? So it all kind of ties in with the competency-based grading system. Motivation to get kids to work.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yes. So, having gone through some of the confusion of last year, looks like you guys sat down and really hammered this out. There are very clear parameters in there as compared to last year. So, really appreciate that. I think that's really well done. Going forward, I think this is really going to help. I have a couple of questions. Can we go back to slide 1? We asked for, actually slide 2. Right. Here, what this speaks to here is that the staff is going to be reaching out to parents. Slide 1 also indicated the reason why I went there first was you want to encourage parent involvement, which is great. One of the things that we heard clearly last year was parents felt that they had a lack of visibility into that. And I know we're replacing systems, so that should solve a lot of those issues. Are there any other tools that you really want to emphasize with parents this coming year for them to use that'll make communication between staff and or you guys and parents easier or more efficient?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, Brian, you said that all parents will automatically be added as guardians on Google Classroom, which means they will get weekly, if not daily, emails from Google Classroom as teachers post things. So that should help a lot too.
So sorry, Roger.
Now, separate from that, when it still hasn't been etched in stone, because we need to talk to the whole middle school staff on it, but I've been proposing more regular teacher conferences. Right now, we've been teaching, 7-8 has been taking teacher conferences as requested by parents. I'm thinking we want to be more proactive and say, hey, let's have a conference time. You know, maybe it's halfway through the year, third of the way through the year, but at some point, make sure we're touching base.
I think that will be well received by the parents, but it also goes into my second part of the question is, what's the staff's level of engagement? Can you give me some idea of, and you guys worked it out, but is everybody in the middle school level bought into this and willing to work? Because it's only going to work if both sides work at it.
Yeah, we met at this all started at the end of the school year, meeting with the entire middle school, and all these guys are just simply here representing everybody else. So everybody is on, including IPs, everybody's on the same page with all of this.
So you think there's a high level of
Yes.
engagement from teaching, from the teaching
And it's
staff?
I think they're looking forward to having that engagement. I think a big piece of it is Alma. We're looking forward to see what Alma has to offer. We don't fully know everything about Alma right now, so we will know more in the next 2 weeks as we get to play with it more and things become more available to us. But seeing what we had in the sandbox, as they were calling it, allows for more communication and allows it to make their job easier to provide their communication.
Awesome.
In addition, Brian's new schedule for us for this year has allowed us to have more meeting time as a middle school and as a 7-8 team. And so we'll be having those direct conversations with all of us. Like, no, we have to make sure we're on this stuff, because otherwise it will fall through. Like Johnny's parents said, you're not doing this, you know, that can't work. So we'll be having more meetings to be able to discuss that stuff.
So, I guess just a couple of questions. Obviously, we kind of hit off on it. Alma's a new system, and obviously, all of this predicated on having any effect in working is Alma getting the information into Alma basically live, right? I mean, it's that day. So, I mean, that's going to change workflow for the staff, because for this to be effective, the staff needs to be uploading everything on basically a daily basis, and so. Do you guys think that's going to be a reality with all the extra things the staff has? I mean, you guys all have pretty full plates to begin with, but is there enough bandwidth to be able to do that?
So you're looking at like uploading assignments and things like that to Alma, and so the parents are getting communication frequently? Is that what you're looking for?
Everything that this is predicated on is predicated on data going into Alma,
Yes.
Alma being able to track incompletes, making sure the assignments are done, because the moment the data becomes a week old, the students are now 10 assignments back if we're not staying on top of the data daily. So are we going to be able to collectively, or is the team going to be able to collectively put it in? Because if one staff member is uploading data,
Right.
and then on Sunday they just go through, or every other Sunday they're like, oh my God, I got to do it, they can plow it all in, they've completely thrown the whole metric out of whack. So that's a concern, and is the staff aware of the importance of making sure, or the team, I guess?
What happens if they don't? That's what I want to mean by that. Like,
So
If a teacher doesn't upload their grades or something.
Right.
they're not
On a-
uploading
this-
incompletes.
This policy has some very specific timeframes in it, especially
Yeah.
with
Right.
So our goal,
so that
so our goal is to kind of explain that. Our goal is to, we update as we can, obviously, throughout the week. I mean, it's a busy week, your lesson planning. But our goal is to, by I think it's Tuesday, we plan the middle school staff, everybody in the middle school staff has to have their grade book up to date for this to work effectively.
Which has always been the
So,
expectation.
which has always been the expectation, but we're our goal now, and Brian's made it one of his big goals this year, is to make sure all of us, we're all on board, we all agreed to it in a meeting that we're going to have this updated by Tuesday. Also, along the week, we're going to do as best we can to update as we go. I mean, you get a busy week. Sometimes you don't upload till Monday night, and that's the way it goes. But other times, maybe you're uploading periodically throughout the week. But
We're hitting the deadline.
you're hitting the deadline.
Yeah.
Parents will see that deadline, be able to log in on those days to know what's going on with their child that week. And part of it also is I think it's very important that parents are also communicating with their kids besides Alma, because there's agenda books that kids should be taking home with them, students should be taking home with them each night, and communicating those pieces to parents as well. So there's another piece of communication. Google Classroom will be daily. So besides this, Google Classroom should be daily, where students and parents should be looking at Google Classroom. So, parents and students can communicate that information. Hey, did you do your homework last night on, this math assignment or this humanities assignment? So those things are going home daily. Agendas, Google. This will be updated, throughout the week, but definitely by Tuesday. Alma will. So this piece of information will help us kind of go forward with that.
Just a second. So I have a question kind of from the other side. There's a lot of information about what will happen if they don't do things here. What have you guys done to coordinate at the middle school to make sure that all of the teachers are in agreement and understand what is being assigned between different classes? Is there a shared calendar that has been set up so that there's specifies exactly how much is being assigned, so that like you have a big math assignment that's given, and you have a huge English assignment, and then there's an art project that needs to get done, and there's
That's all class. We
there's an hour-
rarely have homework.
and then 2 hours of work all of a sudden. What have you guys done on the backside to coordinate between the teachers so that you understand what each of you is assigning?
I can say that that's always been a struggle, and coming into this school year, I'm hoping that we're much more coordinated with that with the new meeting schedule that Brian has put up together.
Which is
for
once a week, right?
We will meet, so essentially the first and third week, the individual grade levels meet. I was speaking to 7 to 8, because 6th grade has a little bit of a different schedule. They meet, all the rooms are right there together, so they constantly meet together. But the first and third is advisory meetings. The second is 7th and 8th grade team entirely together, and the last one is entire middle school.
Do you have that printed out for us? Okay. I'd like to see that so that we can kind of see where the schedule's changing, in addition to okay, so these are the new spaces that the teachers are going to coordinate on, as compared to last year. So the presentation, this feels a lot like what was kind of the end of the year. It's a kind of a codified vision of what you guys did at the end of the year. I'm concerned a little bit about if there isn't like a daily communication where, Anna, you can see that Nick has assigned a huge amount of work, and the kids wind up with an enormous amount of work, and then it becomes overwhelming, but you didn't know that he did that. Like, if that isn't like a daily check-in that teachers can see without necessarily having to go down the hall and talk to each other,
Is that a capability?
there can be a shared Google calendar
But
for
the other
homework.
thing is, I think in that you're looking at pacing. So those bigger assessments aren't going to be assigned as an overnight assessment.
Right.
That's a long-term thing. So if the kids are pacing themselves properly and they say, okay, I'm going to have 5 hours worth of work into this, and hopefully this is what they're learning from all this, right? This is a task. It's going to take me 5 hours. I need to budget my time appropriately. So if they're learning that and they say, okay, I have 10 days to do 5 hours worth of work, but the other assignments might be 20 minutes here and 20 minutes there. So that partially goes back. The students need to take some level of ownership of they need to own their time and budgeting their time and managing their time. That's the life lesson that you're trying to
Okay, so how do you teach that?
instill. That's a great question.
This is a great question.
There's no answer.
There is no answer to that. I mean, the goal is to, the idea is to break down your lessons and your projects in, chunks. And I think in the classroom, I know I speak for the 6th grade only, last year we broke down a lot of our things throughout the day, and a lot of stuff went into that on the back end. I think that, it gets confusing when you're in the classroom and you're breaking down these lessons, and there are students who are, I want to say it out loud, choosing not to work for that 45-minute class period, and you're kind of motivating them to work, and they get a little done, and then they go home, and it piles up on them after we've already chunked it out. Well, their chunk just got bigger at home, or their chunk got bigger 2 days later. And I think, we do our best to manage that in the classroom, by chunking what our assignments are going to be on a daily basis or a weekly basis for that matter. So a lot of the long-term stuff, I think Zach was speaking to, is like, we try to chunk that out in small pieces. The nightly homework, a lot of us often give class time to get that started as well, and utilizing those times effectively. Teaching kids and asking them to utilize that time effectively is really important.
No, but to kind of follow up on the conversation around the effective teaching of the kids to understand that they need to time manage, that is, beside the homework, that in and of itself is a skill that has to be taught. And especially as we transition from 5 to 6, how do you guys work with the 5th graders to start that transition so that the kids understand? Because right now, in the last couple of years, it's felt like a wall. When the kids hit 6th grade, there's a bit of there's a steep learning curve in terms of there's a lot of work. How do we look at ways to effectively integrate those work-study habits into the 5th grade as they transition into 6th, and to continue that learning as they go through 7th and 8th?
I think we started last year. Were we doing, and again, I wasn't teaching this course, but wasn't there a work-study habits course taught during Core and More last year? So last year we were teaching some of those skills through advisory and Core and More last year. So there were times of the different topics, and I don't recall all of them because I was not teaching that course, but there was different topics throughout the year that we were focusing on. Time management was one of them last year, I believe. Persistence was another. So there's, to name a few, those things were taught during advisory and the 6th grade, I know for sure. And then during Core and More, actually in the 6th grade was Core and More, I'm sorry, it was during Core and More in the 6th grade last year. So that's...
Yeah, and I'm not necessarily just pointing this at you guys. It's more of an administration question.
Well, and a piece of it too is we've talked to 5th grade teams as well.
Right.
And we're going to be talking to them and ramping it up as the year goes on. I had that discussion with the team towards the end of the school year last year about having them, the hand-holding has to kind of stop halfway through the year and preparing them a little bit more for that next step.
That's what I was
Just trying
trying
to
to
take off the blinders. So that's something that we're going to collaborate with the 5th grade team on. And we're also including that math piece where they're going to be kind of rotating in and learning how to, all right, I have Miss Atlas for math this trimester. And so they're learning how to, navigate, transition and navigate working with multiple teachers besides just an IA teacher.
Well, and in addition to that, Brian, what started to happen last year in IAs is that the 5th and 6th graders were beginning to be grouped together. So they're also beginning to see that sort of transition, which happens in middle school as well, with 7th and 8th graders together.
I also think part of it too is I think there needs to be a huge parent involvement as well in teachers. I would say probably got to do a better part communicating that information to parents as well, as to how parents can help us and help each other, learn those study skills and those management skills, because a lot of that, I think it works both ways in that piece of it as well. So I think that would be a much better thing. We communicate more to parents what we're teaching about those skills that time. Maybe those conversations can happen at home as well.
And I think the Google Classrooms will help with that.
I hope so.
You're going to get daily updates, like project due in 2 weeks. And you're going to get an update, project due in 5 days, project due tomorrow. Things like that are going to be, parents are going to be bombarded a little bit more with information from all the teachers.
How many have you looked at all what percentage of parents have access to that? I would imagine there's some parents in our community that can't access that. And so have you considered those parents?
If they have an email address, they will get it.
But there might be some that don't. I don't know.
We have not run into a problem. We have families that don't necessarily have internet, but they have their phones.
Okay.
And they have been. I have not seen a parent who does not have a smartphone access that will get an email.
Okay.
So, and everyone, I have also not seen a parent who has not supplied an email on the registration form.
So
We updated those.
if I can
That's
follow up.
updated yearly. So this year, the parent form can go home and.
If I can follow up on the comment about technology, we're moving to a one-on-one for 6th, 7th, and 8th for Google Chromebooks. We funded Chromebooks for all of the kids.
Yeah,
Awesome.
When we talk about a paper assignment book, how could that be integrated into the Chromebook that these kids are going to have? I mean, is that something that we've thought about?
Sure. Do you mean there's still going to be paper assignments? Is that what you're saying?
No, like the assignment book, the presentation. There's an
Oh, the plan. Okay, how are we going to give them kind of incorporate a digital agenda?
I mean, they're going to be coming home with it.
Wouldn't that be the Google Classroom? That would be their digital agenda.
Yeah.
Or
I'm asking you guys.
Google Calendar.
I think the
Yeah, Google
assignments
Calendar.
show up on the Google Calendar. Right?
Yeah.
Right, they do.
But again, that you're going to have to teach that skill of that as part of that time management piece of checking the Google Calendar and going forward. I know with some people the paper thing is a tactile thing. If they have it, they know where everything is. But
Right. So if I can speak just as a parent, last year there were a number of different places that you had to go and look for things. And I think reducing the number of places that you go to look as a parent to find out what's going on.
One dashboard.
one source.
If there's one place that you can go, because last year it was you got to go to Google Classroom and you can see if there's something got returned, and then you can go and you can look at the comments in Google Classroom. It's great. And then you can go into MMS and you can look in the individual class, and then you can look at the assignments on the class, and then something might have been written down as well. So you've got 3 different platforms that you're trying to kind of track, and there wasn't full overlay between the 3. Could there?
We don't know enough about Alma to answer that question.
All right.
So, I mean, essentially, you're going to have 2 platforms. It'll be Google Classroom and Alma at this point. And we don't know what Alma's going to look like.
Can we make that a future state goal of the one source of truth?
We don't know.
We don't.
We don't know yet.
Can we work
But
towards that?
you're looking at 2 different things. Google Classroom is not going to give you grades. You know, you're comparing oranges and apples in that sense. You need.
Well,
you need
I was
both.
actually
I
thinking
mean,
more of Jim's point of for parent engagement and getting that in, knowing where those assignments are, knowing, the feedback. I get the grade part. I get what you're saying. That's probably not going to be able to be integrated together. But if me as a parent would want to know, when's that project due? Where am I going to go? That's going to be, if we're going to say that type of information is going to be on Google Classroom or Google.
That should always be
Calendar.
It should be Google Classroom.
Perfect.
That's where it should be.
If I want to know what you've got on that project you just turned in, or whatever, if I have to go to Alma,
Yeah, that would.
I can deal with that. That's
Just like an alpha on myself.
Yeah, everything should be on Google Classroom. If it's assigned and it has a due date, it should be on Google Classroom. If not,
That's the expectation.
teachers drop the ball.
And there are shared calendars on Google Classroom. There could be grade-wise shared calendars where you could see what the other classes are assigning and get a sense of what's coming.
So I don't want to buy in too deep on that.
Yeah.
More based on what you're saying in terms of like anything major, they're not assigning something huge that's going to take hours due tomorrow. Most of everything I assign is due tomorrow. So it's kind of it's like an apples and oranges thing again, and a different sort of vibe. I mean, I'm always listening to the kids as they're saying, oh my God, I have 3 tests and a project due tomorrow. Okay, I'll slow down, but it's affecting how far along I'm getting. If I'm stopping what I'm doing, or I'm saying, okay, we'll stop, we won't do this, we'll finish it up tomorrow. So that's back me up a little bit too. So I kind of think about it both ways.
Shouldn't that, rather than through the kids, have you go down to the hall to whoever's got the test and
No.
say, you're back and stuff on?
No, I like communicating with kids.
No, I'm not saying don't communicate with the kids, but
it's also going to depend, to your point, it's also going to depend on the kid, because if he's got 10 days to do something or a project deadline and he waits until
The night before.
the
9.
night before,
Yes. So we are trying to avoid
it's not
that.
your fault for putting
But hey,
that all
If he
together.
does it the night before but gets it in on time, at least he can reassess it afterwards. You can go, I'll get it in, I'll finish it next week.
But if the kid is coming to you and saying, I'm completely swamped, but it's because he has chosen not to.
And that's a simple,
And
That's
and these
part of
guys
the
will be
time
able to speak
management
to that.
That's
because
a life
we're gonna be
lesson right
meeting
there. That's what-
bi-weekly with the team,
But
so
that-
they're able to speak to that and be like,
that's
no,
your
Billy,
opportunity
you
to say
had-
to the kid,
your
listen,
assignment was given to you 2 weeks
You had 2 weeks to get it done. You're coming to me the day before telling me you haven't started it.
But my point is that's not a workload issue for them
No,
because you guys chunked it out and did it.
it's a kid not
So
following
we are
through.
trying to, like, we're starting off the school year this year teaching those, I forget the technical,
The
work study habits or whatever, is that what it's called?
Habits of learning.
Habits of learning.
We changed it, right? So we're starting our first week, that's the first thing we're gonna be doing in all of our core classes is teaching that stuff.
Set the expectation.
Yes.
Set the bar.
What does it look like to be responsible in math? What does
Yeah.
it look like to be
High,
responsible
right.
in language
This is
arts?
what we
Art.
want, this is what we expect. My biggest concerns are execution. It has to be, the follow through has to be 100%.
Yep.
Otherwise, it falls apart. And once it falls apart, getting it back on the rails is going to be very difficult because it carries no weight at that point. So it has to be consistent. It has to be followed through. That policy, that timeline that's written out in there, it has to be stuck in, right? The other, just
That's my job.
global concerns, other thoughts, all right, concerns are, the stick, right? We talk about the carrot and the stick. So the stick in this case is you get so far behind, you lose certain activities,
Flex time.
you lose sports, you lose flex time, you use this. So we're using a stick, right? But is the stick big enough? So we still, I brought detention up before. I don't think the kid's ever been hurt by detention.
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah.
There's a stick here. My question is, where's the carrot?
It's supposed to be the zero heroes piece.
The Zero Heroes. Can
That's
you talk?
that's one carrot.
Well, what is
I was
what
going
is
to get
it?
to the carrot. I'm not done with the stick
Okay,
yet.
okay. But you were talking about a bigger stick.
I'm starting with the stick.
Go ahead.
So with the stick, detention. No one's been hurt by detention. So the biggest part of the stick is, okay, you can't go to the dance or play sports. Well, a big number of the kids, okay.
Well, that's why we included,
That's
they are losing their flex time and their advisory time on those Fridays.
Okay. And
That's why we're not calling it academic probation.
but
It was
that's-
sports probation.
that's 1
Probation.
hour a week, right? I mean, basically is what they're giving up.
Mhm.
Is that enough of a stick? If they don't get caught up, so what happens after? Okay, we've taken your flex time away. You're still not caught up. I think you need one more level of stick. So the next stick is
Well, that's a parent conversation.
I think sometimes we try and catch those kids we give them a work day in school. So that instead of going to all their classes, they've spent a day working in Brian's office or something like that. And it's not, I don't necessarily look at that. Maybe it's a stick because they're missing that social piece of being with their friends and stuff. But that is not going to work for everybody. That stick, you're right, absolutely, it's not going to work for everybody.
I want to make sure that they need to understand. We need to teach the kids. They need to understand. There's a certain expectation. There's a workload. There's an expectation that you guys have of the kids. There's an expectation that the parents have of the kids. The parents have it of you. They have it of us. We all have this big circle, right? We're all expecting things, and I just don't want to see it fall apart. And I don't want to be sitting here in December and having us trying to, or having you guys say, okay, well, we're rethinking the wheel again here, and so, we need to do this, or we need to do this. I want this to work. I want it rolled out when school starts. I want the parents to understand it. I want them to understand where the sticks are, and then we'll talk about carrots. But I worry that there isn't enough. What's the consequence? Because it's very easy for a kid to say, whatever.
Absolutely.
And at that point, we've said, okay, we're just going to let you slide. I don't like that. So what's the mechanism? So I worry that there isn't enough of that mechanism. That's my concern. Take it for what it's worth. But the other side of it is, yes, so the carrot. The hero to zero thing?
Zero heroes.
The zero hero thing
Yeah.
doesn't seem like much of a carrot. Like how is that rolled out? What's that carrot
I
look
think
like?
to us it doesn't seem like much of a carrot, but to the students it is a big carrot. I think when students are becoming part of they actually talk about it pretty frequently amongst themselves. Like, I'm a zero hero this week, and and if a kid misses a week, they get frustrated because I wanted to be that zero hero. They really get excited to be a part of that. And I think it's there's also I guess you're looking at two things. You're looking at extrinsic motivation versus intrinsic motivation. I think there's two pieces of it. the kids who have a tons of intrinsic motivation, zero hero may not be a big deal to them, but the kids who need to be extrinsically motivated, this is a big deal to them, So, every kid and every student and every parent are going to have different expectations around that carrot. And I know the kids love it. They talk about it a lot. I mean, there's kids that don't like it, but there's kids that do love it. And I think that's, again, with the stick, you're not going to catch every kid with the carrot either. You're not going to do that. It's like,
It doesn't say what the zero hero, what the reward is besides they're being recognized, right?
Yeah.
We're talking like ice cream parties and stuff like that for these kids. It's not just congratulations, here's a sticker. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, let's have ice cream or something like that, a sundae for those kids.
What are some things you guys did?
Last year, Zero Hero was run as like every Friday there was a public listing of the kids that were Zero Heroes, and the kids that weren't Zero Heroes were asked to work on their work. So it was kind of like a public assessment of your work study habits,
I
right?
think that's why we kind of went to more open-ended. It'll be during lunchtime in the classroom, or maybe it'll be a game time or something different than recognized in the cafeteria.
I think Jim's referring to when we announced kids who were zero heroes.
That was,
Yes.
There was
that was 2 years ago, actually.
Well, we
wasn't
did
it?
it as sixth grade.
Oh, sixth grade,
had
you
done
did
it
it
like
that,
for the
okay.
last 3-4 years, and those kids were announced as being zero heroes, and they were announced as congratulations, you guys rocked it out, and that's how that was part of the reward, So they were announced for being zero heroes, absolutely.
But that also puts a huge amount of pressure on certain kids who do not like to publicly hear that they're not making. It's kind of like an admonition in a way that I didn't make the cut. The backside. I mean, the Zero Hero is kind of an equivalent to a management style. It's like a self-assessment management. Basically, a lot of companies will use that type of monthly review of yourself, and if it's a way to kind of encourage the people who never make the grade to leave the company. Because you're always someone who's not announced. I just am concerned that there are the kids that get very emotionally vested in whether or not they get announced, and I have heard from parents that there are kids who get emotionally vested in whether or not they are on that public announcement, public affirmation that they are the ones who've done their work. So I see it, yeah, for some kids it's a huge positive. It's like, I made it, this is awesome, this is great. But it has a double edge.
It does. I think it's so important though to recognize those kids publicly. To be able to say, congratulations, you guys did an awesome job.
Right.
And because those kids worked really hard. And I think giving them that public recognition is important. And I think it is part of the carrot. And I know, like Nick was saying, it's not going to catch every kid the right way, but I do really think that kids are told more often than not when there's an issue. And just like all of us in our jobs, we always want to hear the positive stuff too. And I think that making sure kids are positively recognized in front of other adults and in front of other peers is really important.
And I just want to piggyback off that and say that our zero hero is not a complete zero hero. It's 100% completion 7 out of 10 weeks. So that allows for a bad week. It allows for oh, I just had an off week. So it's
So is it going to change to a quarterly announcement then rather than a weekly? Is that what you're saying?
it's a trimester.
Trimester announcement?
It's a trimester
Well,
recognition.
there's 2-3 parts to this. Zero heroes are announced weekly in our team meetings with the kids. They're announced weekly. Your kids are
That's in
students.
sixth grade.
Yeah.
Some eighth grade don't have that opportunity because it's kind of just so screwy. So
But they'll
We'll
probably
just talk
during
to
advisory.
Advisory,
Yeah.
we'll talk to our advisory, which
Yeah.
is a group of 13 kids. It's, and they'll know. It should be less intimidating.
I agree that it's definitely a good, positive reinforcement tool. What other tools could we use? Because you're not going to, like you said, you're not going to catch everybody with one stick or one carrot. What
Two
other
sticks and two
options?
carrots.
Before we go, can I ask just one question about kind of clarifying this incident? If you have a student who, and maybe this is getting at kind of what you're getting at, Jim, if a student who spends an hour working on the math homework because it's so difficult, or whatever the class is, and there's still 10 problems left, and it's time to go to bed or soccer practice or whatever, is it okay for the parent to say, my child legitimately, without any distractions of social media, whatever, spent 45 minutes on this assignment, she or he got this far, draw a line, we're going to bed. Does that still qualify for the zero hero, or does that student get disqualified for that?
Good for me. I just long
I
as the
think
parent,
we
yeah, I
communicated
would
that
for
to
me,
me,
you know,
totally.
like, I'd be like, thank you for letting me know.
But I think that's on a case by case basis
Yeah.
too.
Okay.
I mean, I say, you know, you have some parents that will cross off every assignment and say that's enough, and you have some parents who legitimately say, hey, it was a rough night. I had that on. So
Yeah, I
there's
don't want kids
there's
working
many
that long.
Yeah.
pieces to that
They
take
missed a
place.
piece.
So you made that clear to the parents that that's an option, as long as it's legitimate, not every night, that kind of thing. Like that's part of this dialogue with the parents. You are communicating back and forth with the parents and hearing that kind of.
But that's also reinforcement. Those skills that the kid was struggling with,
Should be retaught.
you need to
Absolutely.
Right, and any
focus on
good
that
teacher
effort.
will do
So-
that,
So
right?
you don't
Yeah.
understand your algebra assignment. Okay, we need to spend some time on your algebra assignment. So maybe that's where you follow up with them on that Friday night.
Yeah.
The other side of it is, so I talked about more sticks, but it also seems like we maybe there's no carrot. So if you have a kid that all three trimesters makes the hero to zero program, is there another
You
carrot?
want more?
I want more.
I like
I'm not-
it.
Any suggestions on carrots?
I'm not,
like
all,
it.
I'm not all stick. I don't mind carrot.
Any-
But I mean, I don't know. What will?
Can we get cash?
That will motivate.
We can't do
There's a
like,
salary
yeah, be
line
careful
in the
too, because we
budget.
can't do field trips, we can't do anything like that. You know, we're limited on kind of. what-
No, but I don't know the answer to
Yeah.
the question. That's why
I
I'm
mean,
asking this
there,
question.
there are things that motivate
Well, what
middle schoolers like outdoor time. Last year they literally didn't go out, and I hope that got addressed as the board asked about it. Like the kids didn't go out. You reward them with extra outdoor
Sixth grade went out every
Every-
4 times a week.
twice a week, 15 minutes.
4 times a week. They went out last year.
Okay.
I'm just to clarify, they did go out 4 times a week last year.
Is that enough?
But there's,
And I don't think it's enough, but I want
I
more.
mean, it's something for you guys,
Yeah.
for you guys to think
You
about.
can motivate a lot of kids, but just let them go outside.
Yes.
Absolutely, that's what we want.
Recess was a carrot for the zero hero last year as well.
Which
Well,
the
and-
fact that recess is a is a reward, like there
No,
for
recess
me there
should
should
be a
always
thing.
be outdoor time for
Right.
kids in K through 8. And all the studies that we've seen, the more time that they have actually outdoor, the healthier the kids are, and can reset. And I remember Ellen O'Donnell sitting here talking about her time in Finland, saying every single day those
You're
kids are
outside.
outside. Every single day, it doesn't matter what the weather is. And so like additional time would be something that would be great. Like I think there should be like a base level that the kids get a chance to be outside. And then if they do really well, then reward them with more time or something of that sort.
Or time to work on an individual project that they're interested in.
I can
Other tools.
I can say for myself, like I've done things with my magnet in the past where I've said, it was like 2 years ago, I was like, if nobody's on, academic probation, in these weeks or whatever, or this trimester, I was like, I'll give you a pizza party. We had a pizza party together as a magnet because my kids really wanted that. So they got, a little something extra for me. And but going outside too, it'll be like, all right, like, so you guys are all caught up, let's go outside. Or let's work really hard for the first 40 minutes of magnet, and then the last, 15 we'll go outside once you guys have put in a good effort for the day. So I think there can be stuff that's sort of tailored to the group too, like not necessarily global, but what worked for the kids in the group.
If I could ask you to go to the next slide, Mark. This is a question that I had just seen kind of focused around competency-based education. If they receive a 1 or 2 on the summative assessment, they're eligible to reassess. And I understand that they have to do the work to reassess. But shouldn't all of our kids who get a 1 or 2 be required to reassess unless there's like a IEP issue or something? Like, shouldn't they be striving to get to competency? Isn't that saying they can check out of competency on this?
I think we're talking about like this, like on this assessment. So, for example, like I can talk about language arts because we assess like informative reading all the time or informative writing. And so I'll take writing because I have a case from last year where I had a kid who turned in something and it wasn't great at all. And he got a 1, but he had done all of his work to get to it. And then he stayed after school with me twice to work on revisions. And he was still at a 2. But I said to him, you know what? We're going to hit this again later in the year. There's no need to like beat this assignment to death. So, you know, he did reassess, but I stopped him at the 2 because I was like, we're going to hit this competency again. And, you know, it was just killing him. So I said, this is the best you can do right now, and that's okay.
But philosophically, like,
But-
isn't that what we're going towards? Am I?
Yeah, I think kind of exactly what you're talking about. The year, if you're looking at the whole year,
Yeah.
it's kind of like by the end of the year, you want your kids to be competent, right?
Right.
Kind of, and so a curriculum is set up so that you come back to the same competency over and over throughout the year.
Right.
And it's not so much a level, the 1 or 2 is not reflecting level of achievement like this, you know, but it's sort of where are you right now on this pathway toward becoming competent.
Mhm.
And so if you're not a 3 right now in September, October, whatever it is, just
That's
like,
fine,
you
yeah.
know, you're going to do the same competency in a different subject, with a different context. You'll do the same competency and same skill in April. And then the student will have had 4 more months to mature and then practice, and then they will be closer to being competent at that point.
My question is more like, shouldn't they try again? Like, shouldn't they, if they aren't competent, shouldn't they at least give it one more try before? Okay, fine, you're going to wind up at a 2 for now, and you're going to learn it later. But shouldn't you kind of like?
If the 1, 2, 3, 4 is more of a reflection, it's kind of like what does a grade mean? Like, this is a bigger discussion. But if it's a reflection of where they are developmentally, which is what we're doing here, then it's kind of like beating a dead. You're not quite there yet, and so a little bit more maturing, a little bit more growth. We'll come back to. We'll try to get later in the year, and now you can do it.
We also have there's a certain amount of bandwidth in any given day.
Right.
And so at some point, you start to exhaust the bandwidth, and if you're exhausting that bandwidth on 2 students to the sacrifice of that time with the other 18 or 20 or 60 or whatever that you're responsible for, there's diminishing returns. I don't want to lose any of them, but
Right, and I know I'm getting in the weeds on this, but it seemed like if they're going to, you know, if they have a chance, and you guys know whether or not, you have a pretty good idea on the first test whether or not this kid can actually try it again and do it again. Like, all right, on Tuesday afternoon, everybody who I'm going to talk to, you got to try it again. Rather than come to me and make a schedule and then 2 on Tuesday, 3 on Thursday, 2 on Friday. Just logistically, is it more effective to say, okay, the try again for this is on X date? Because it seemed like last year you guys got overwhelmed with.
it could be after school
Right.
during a detention-like period.
Right. The most
I had a lot of
effective-
those at lunch last year, detention-like lunches, where we worked on reassessments.
We tried giving a day in math classes anyway. We
Mhm.
tried giving a reassessment day.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be non-productive.
Oh.
You might have one kid take advantage of that time, but you would plan the class for it. Only one kid was ready to do it, and so you're losing really a day. You can have kids working on other things, but it's still not the same.
Right.
Had more success with the after school, having kids stay after and doing reassessments, because those kids generally, if they're going to give it their after school time, have been committed to wanting to know the stuff. Yes.
And I got to say, as a board member, and I think the whole board will speak to how great and dedicated you guys are to staying after school. It's really amazing how much time you guys wind up. I've come in here at 4 o'clock, and half of you guys are still here, or 3/4 of you. It's fantastic.
I'm actually convinced they don't go home.
Some of, have you met Cindy?
There's someone caught somewhere in the world.
That'd be nice.
But-
Kelsey?
So kind of one of the other things I wanted to bring up is on the last slide when it talks about not the 0 0. Let me go back. When it talks about probation, is there space here to offer a bigger carrot to kids? Where okay, you're on probation, rather than you get the 5-day whammy, you got to do your work regardless, but you don't come off the 5-day whammy. Is there space for like the after-school program to have some sort of a tutor who's hired where the kids can work towards getting themselves off of probation if they bust before those 5 days? Like, I'm going to get my stuff done. I'm going to come back to all you guys. I'm going to say, look, I got it done. I'm really sorry.
Brian?
I think a piece of that is the kids know when I'm running probation. They are told constantly. Like,
Now it's gonna be every week.
well, the probation's run every 3 weeks. The probation's every 3 weeks. So,
Oh,
The checking for the 0 heroes is every week.
okay, I'm
yeah,
sorry.
so,
Sorry.
but the kids know, like, I go around to every single kid and I talk to the advisory, I talk to them in the classroom. These guys think this degree's running probation next Tuesday. Get your stuff in.
There will only be probation once a month. It's the way you
Essentially, every 3
Every
weeks.
third, yeah.
every third
So
week
we
rather than
spread
every
it
week
out.
like last
Well,
year.
last year, it was we were doing it was once a week, and we scrapped that. And third trimester, we went to every 2 weeks. It worked better, but then calling around to other schools around the area, we decided on 3 weeks, and I talked to all the coaches, and they were all in agreement with that.
And can you get, or not buying, but invest, will the coaches be, can you invest or involve the coaches in this? And you can go to them and say, listen, you're not gonna have a team on Friday if you
And
don't.
the coaches are totally for this. That's what they like the idea of 3 weeks, except they don't like it. Allowed kids to, even if they got on it, they missed 5 days, but they still have 10 more days of practice after that if they were to get on it again.
One of the big changes too is we went in 2 or more classes. So it's not just one assessment, bam, you're off.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you really have to be not cutting it in 2 classes, and that's pretty hard to do. You're
Yeah,
kind
we're
of just
definitely-
not
this
really
was
doing your
definitely
job.
more lenient than what we were doing at the end of the school year this year. So, and it gives kids ample time to get the work done. So,
One other thing that I'll last year I talked to a number of parents who had kids with enormous numbers of missings. By January, there were kids who had 20 to 40 missing assignments.
That's over.
This will be,
It can't happen.
How are we going to get ahead of that this year?
well, that's the
Not-
parents, that's the advisors speaking to the parents, informing them your child's missing flex time this week because they have 4 more missing assignments.
All right.
And this has to go back to the parents. The parents have to step up and say, talk to their son and daughter and say, all right, you have 4 missing assignments, what are we doing? These guys can only do so much. I can only do so much.
Right.
The biggest stick in the world are not going to motivate some students. But when a kid has 60 missing assignments, there is no doubt the parent is aware of it. And it
Been
has
communicated
always been the
multiple
case.
times.
For a parent to say, I didn't know my kid had 60 missing assignments, I can tell you right now, they are aware. And there's no way it's not humanly possible for them not to know.
and that's where that communication, the more effective communication is gonna come into play. So
Right.
you're getting updates every day,
Yeah, the
And-
classroom is going to be telling them.
and as long as, everything is kept up to date,
And if a parent says, I don't want these Google Classroom updates, they can opt out of it. But
So
it's going to be
child
very hard
education,
for a
though,
parent to come back and say, and make a case for themselves and their child when they say, my kid's missing 40 assignments, and they say, well, I opted out of the Google Classroom. It's kind of like, I don't know, it's like, as an administrator, it's like, well, we set this up for you, we gave you this tool, and you're not using it, so, like, they can have their beef with us, but we provided them that.
Right.
So,
One thing that too is that numbers of missing assignments is crossing multiple assessments. It has to be. And I'm a big fan of once we have an assessment, those assignments aren't missing anymore because they were really intended to set you up for that. And so if those got zeroed out or go away or whatever system
Taken
now
off.
so taken
Yeah.
off. The numbers shouldn't get that high.
But that's like a conversation like. Is that like between like the whole middle school?
That was the middle. That's what our procedure was.
Okay.
You after the assessment, you were to go through and wipe off the missings. That's what our procedure was last year as a middle school,
And
and
how's that gonna be this year?
it should be the same.
So part of the problem.
That's
too,
just
is that-
different than
Part of
this.
the problem too is NMS was calculating assignments
Yeah.
3 times.
Yes.
So
Oh,
if
yeah.
you had 60 missing assignments, you only had 20.
Right.
And that was a glitch that they were not able to figure out.
So all year long, we
Well,
had
and that was, as a parent, that was phenomenally frustrating.
Yeah, and that was
Then you-
the double click to find it.
Then you get into the, oh no, I've done it, and oh, but it says you didn't.
But Dad.
But I think in that aspect last year, we felt the pain too, and it was really hard for us as teachers as well because the kids are running into assignments. I had 5 and I only had 1. You know, it was just,
And then
it was a lot of logistical nightmares for the kids, parents, and us. I think last year with LMS.
So I gotta go back to this. Sure. We're gonna wipe off the smaller, so you don't do any of the smaller assessments.
After, oh, okay.
You don't do any of the smaller assessments, you do a large assessment. If you pass it, all the work you skip doesn't count.
It doesn't. The grade. Well, we won't leave it in there as missing. It will just turn to a 0.
So, but I
But
mean,
that doesn't affect your
It doesn't. The grades. Homework doesn't
I
affect.
know, and
Yeah.
this is gonna go back to the other thing.
because we're gonna hear from parents who say my kid gets 3s and 4s, doesn't do any homework.
And so why does my kid have to do all the other assignments if they get 3 and 4s on the test? My kid gets.
I think that's a very rare case. I would have to say that there are. I've heard a lot of communication like that through parents, but a lot of the times it's not actually the case that's taking place. Kids aren't necessarily passing their assessment. I think there's a lot of, the assessments the formatives are designed. They're the practice. To succeed on the summative. It's the practices leading up to the game. And if you're not showing up to practice ever, for the most part, you're probably not going to do very well at the game.
Right.
And a lot of kids, we heard a lot of that too. Well, my student is, a parent would say, my student is passing them all without doing homework. And your student, unfortunately, is not passing them all without doing homework. That's not the case. It may have happened once, but it didn't happen the other assessments that took place.
My concern is that you leave that opportunity. You're leaving the door open, right? And so we collectively have talked about the homework. We've kicked the dog into it's been a never-ending conversation, right? I personally think homework needs to count. My own opinion, homework has to count. But we just, by our own admission, said, okay, this is what we're going to do. But really, it doesn't really count because as soon as they take the test, we're going to wipe it all off anyway because it's not graded or scored for anything. It doesn't really mean anything. So at the end of the year, you don't do any homework. You pass 10 tests. You pass a class. You spend a week on probation. But that doesn't matter to
You
some
are
people.
gonna be giving them a grade, competency score on their work study habits.
Comments. Are
No,
they,
no.
is it a score?
It's
Is
gonna
it
be a
now?
score.
The worst they have is essentially communication to the parents saying, your kid doesn't do anything. They have 1s in all this column, but they have 3s on their test. And that's just information for the parents.
So they'll get a score on that,
Yes.
right? So there is that. I'm with you 100%. It's more important that they get the procedures down of like staying on top of their schedule and doing their work and building these habits than it is whether or not they can solve a system of equations for half of them, right? But
And it's,
I think you will see, particularly at the beginning of the year, if some of the students you may see a student do that, do no work and get a 3 or a 4 at the start. But as the year goes on, they shouldn't be because they're just.
Yeah, but
But here's the thing. I agree with what Nick said. It's the practice for the game, right? Homework. So homework becomes baked into the game evaluation. So homework counts in that manner. It's baked in to the final score.
But
If you don't do your homework,
if you
you're
don't
not going to do well at the
practice,
game.
You don't play the game.
So it seems
That's
like we
the-
could have a
Yeah,
philosophical
we're not gonna
discussion
go
for a really long time.
I know.
We
I
could
know,
probably put
I know.
educators in a room and have the same philosophical
We've had this.
I
We've
was
had
gonna say,
this
like-
conversation you all having right now. We've had 1,000 times over again.
For many hours. The purpose was for the team, the entire middle school team, to come together and agree upon a set of procedures, and I think that they've accomplished that task, and that we need to put this in place, and there will be, some of us will not agree, some parents will not agree, some teachers will not agree, but you're never going to get 100% agreement. You're never going to reach every single kid in the same way. But that's why we have a team of experts that knows their students and knows when to give a bigger stick and when to give a bigger reward.
I still would like to see more reward. I understand that you
You have
need
some ideas, throw them to us.
I wrote them down. Jim, like reset. He's a extra time recess, and then Ken said individual project of choice. So I wrote those down because we left it kind of open when we had that. We left it open for that reason because I think we feel the same way you do. We want more care. We'd like more stick too, but it's like you can't weigh every kid. Every kid's carrot is different. Every stick is different. Some kids will stay after school. Some kids can't stay after school. Some kids want the recess. Some kids don't want the recess. They want a pizza party. So I think those are all the different pieces that we have to kind of look through as a staff and make those decisions along the way.
I think also in terms of tooling, I would love to see the Chromebooks that we're paying for them to have, like the more of the assignments and such integrated into what we're giving for technology. And also I would love to see a shared homework calendar that your assignments it can be programmed so that your assignments just go up. So as a parent, you can see tomorrow's a really busy day. You're going to have to pay attention because you have 5 things due, or it's.
Google does that.
Google does
Google
push that
Classroom
all in
does
one.
that.
Those emails they push them.
But if we sign in and look at if I
It's
look
gonna
at
have
Christopher's
all of-
calendar,
Yeah.
it's going to have all
It will
the
show
stuff.
all his stuff all the classes he's enrolled in will come to you in an email saying what his assignments are, his workload is. So it'll say that's something that Google should do, and I believe does do. So if you enroll in the class, you will get that email.
You are.
And it'll all be in one, like Jim was saying, it'll all be combined in one.
So then the last step, and this is more for administration, is to communicate how all of this works to parents. Because the tools need to be explained. The prompts, like when you get these group Google emails, this is what it's for, this is what you should do with it. That I think like we had talked about kind of having the parent handbook, that's like
That process should
This
start
needs to
sooner.
this needs to be put in the handbook in a easily digestible format before the start of school.
Right.
And
On the website.
Brian
That's why we were, yeah.
talking about like the barbecue, the open house piece that for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, this is gonna be a piece of this communication, understanding, kind of laying it out.
how it works.
Right.
As a board, do we need to does this need to become policy so that it has?
It sounds like there are a couple of things to chew on, and we have another meeting this month. So if you guys want to chew on putting a couple more rewards in or something, you can get to do this. Or
This is I believe this is the
I have a forest.
the homework policy, right? This is what we're going to use as a procedure in the middle school. And I agree with you.
This is how you are going to apply.
Right.
Yes.
The current policies. We're not changing policy. This is how you are going to apply
And
current
we don't
policy.
need to amend our policy to be more reflective.
well, we need to talk about our policy.
The policy is on here as well as a first reading.
Right.
And you probably want to move that up on the agenda maybe while you have staff here.
You guys want to sit and have the homework policy?
Well, I think the
It's a giant
proposal.
rabbit hole.
If I get my water.
The
I was
proposal
gonna drink.
on the policy came from staff, so I think it makes sense for them to speak to it and why they're proposing
What's
making
it?
that
It
proposal.
says second.
Yeah.
I remember
Looking at the
Yeah.
old one, I'm sorry.
seeing that formative assessment set of homework, or it has to be homework.
Okay, so that kind of brings that conversation to a close. I have not seen anybody from Deerfield Fire Department or Selectmen, so we will move on. Consent items.
Can we talk about, do you mind doing that? The
Oh, you wanna
policy
move policy
right now
up?
while they're here?
All right, what's the wish of the board?
Yes.
Yes. All right, so we are going to move up IKB homework.
It's in there, I don't. It's in your drive.
I can't sign in if I try.
Here. And then maybe, were one of you prepared to talk about who was gonna do that? About what the proposal was for the policy?
Thought you were.
I have it, I have the red line, but that was given to me by somebody.
So essentially, when
You wanna do it, Brian?
Yeah, sure.
Here you go, Brian.
So essentially what
these guys read all this, all the teachers read it, and they all kind of agreed on the vast majority of it. We redlined, was the part, the third paragraph, and the idea was that it was just very open-ended, and it allowed for a lot, it's kind of, it was just too open-ended, essentially. So where it says, well, there are multiple ways of accomplishing this, one way of assessing homework is compatible with competency-based education, providing options for students to challenge themselves. And so the teachers just felt like it was giving too much freedom to the student and not enough kind of like, this is it, this is where your homework is your homework, and still allowing for differentiation and things of that nature, but also just saying that we want, this is homework page, whatever is due, and that's what, and it's not allowing for the parents to come back and say, well, I don't want my child doing this homework, or this homework shouldn't count because my kid already knows this information. So that was kind of where we just came up with that piece of redlining that part out.
Questions now, or wait till next?
We can start the discussion on this. Yeah.
I guess my question would be, not my question, my concern is that in a heterogeneous classroom, which to my understanding, middle school classrooms here are, I could be wrong about that, I'd like to hear more about that, but if you are teaching math,
everything
and
except
you've
for
got
math.
a group of, maybe math is a good example, let's say you're teaching English class, and say you're all reading the same book. I don't know if that happens. Maybe in a classroom, maybe different groups are reading different books. But my concern is the differentiation between the students. In a heterogeneous group classroom, if every kid is getting the same homework, then to me, I think that 2/3 of the students are not being met at their level, just sort of by definition. Like a heterogeneous classroom, you've got everybody. And so therefore, you've got students operating at different levels with different competencies already attained, different skill sets. And so to me, having everybody do the same homework seems to not meet 2/3 or whatever of the students' needs. So I would love to, as part of our discussion, I'd love to hear more about how the middle school addresses that concern.
And I think I would say math is a little different because math is
More groups.
it's group by ability. But do you want to speak?
I mean, I can talk about language arts because we do some whole class text and individual text and like book groups. But the homework that the kids do is not like you're going to do this worksheet and bring it back tomorrow. It's more likely to be something like watch this video on Google Classroom so that tomorrow you're ready to talk about it in class. So at least for my classes, like the homework or the homework is like work on the rough draft of your story that you're writing. So it is, in that sense, sort of automatically individual for the kid if they're working on their own thing or if it's responding to something you read in your book. Like that's at their level with their book. So I don't know if I can say anything about like science or anything like that, but
Okay. And maybe more of the differentiation is happening in your classroom.
Yeah.
When you're working one-on-one with the kids, you're able to.
a lot of it's done in class.
There's a time element to that too, right? Because each student's going to achieve levels at different time frames. So they may do the same homework assignment, but it may be in a different time frame. Somebody might be advanced enough to do it one week, and then the rest of the class does it the following week, or something.
And I can say for language arts too, like sometimes if I say the rough draft is due on Friday, I might have a student turn it in on Tuesday because they're done and they say, can you take a look at this already? And then they get a round of feedback because they went home and did it and they were at that level and they're ready for me to push them to the next one.
In the math class at times, to kind of clarify that, if we're working on order of operations, for example, there are going to be students at different levels of order of operations. Some students will be working with some basic whole numbers where there's no negatives involved, and other students will have the ability to understand negatives. So, those two students may get different worksheets. This student will get the worksheets that has order of operations with some negatives, which is a little bit more advanced. Another student may get just order of operations with whole numbers. So that's kind of how that works, but they're both going to get like the same kind of looking worksheet.
Yeah, but they get different assignments.
Essentially, sometimes, yes.
Yeah, okay, great.
Yeah.
That's what
I don't know if it's like a 2/3, 1/3 thing,
Yeah,
but it's
whatever it is.
when necessary, when needed, when it fits. That's kind of where we go with that.
Yeah, I think like I think that the biggest line is like the student gets to choose the part of the assignment. I mean, that's where a piece of, like,
Yeah.
we're allowing a
So
lot
it
of
still should
freedom
come from the
for.
director, it's still coming from the teacher.
Yes,
The student is
yeah.
completing what was asked,
Right,
not like
exactly.
choosing your own
Right,
answer.
I think that was that.
Okay.
My concern was like, oh, I'm going to choose not to do my
I think,
draft.
right, yeah.
It doesn't
And for
work.
middle school, and, and I think the wording is maybe more appropriate for a high school level. Junior, senior kids were preparing themselves for college, but when you're talking about middle schooler, they don't want to do work ever. So,
And I think this is
You're a senior.
This is my one, so you said, well, if the student chooses, I don't want to do a rough draft. Well, homework still doesn't count. So the student can just turn it in and say, this is my final draft. Thank you. Because
And they get a one.
and
Right.
this is my struggle with this.
And I think with homework, Zach, is really every kid has a choice. I mean, you're going to make a choice to do it or not do it as you go home, and your parents are either going to be able to force you to do your homework at times if you choose not to do it. But I mean, every kid has to.
It's my biggest struggle with
Yeah.
competencies is that we've taken away this component and we've said it's not graded. So at the end of the day, it doesn't count. Last year when we asked 6 times, it doesn't count, it doesn't count. Yes, okay, you don't go to practice, you don't do well in game. As far as I'm concerned, you don't show up to practice, you don't play the game.
But that's not the student's choice. That's the coach's choice in that example.
This is where you and I have a philosophical difference.
We
And I don't know
do,
if Shelley
we
here
do.
to back me up on this one.
I think
I'm on an
the
island.
I think that the I'm cutting you off. I'm sorry. No, I'm not really sorry. I think that the final half of that paragraph was more speaking to like moving ahead, like providing advancement, like for a really motivated kid that could go towards finding something that was super challenging. But I can see how it can read both ways.
I think that was our concern. It was reading. I guess our fear was it was reading as it was optional, and not in differentiating. Hey, let's move this kid forward because that's what I think all homework kind of is in a way. But I think when we read it as it was very optional to do homework, and I think Zach said it earlier. It's like homework really shouldn't be an option. It also should be graded. Zach wants that too, but I mean it shouldn't be optional, and that's what I think our concern was with this. It seemed to be optional homework.
I mean, we basically moved to a situation. Regardless of the fact that we have 1, 2, and 3, 1, 2, 3, 4 next to different levels of competency, we moved to a gradeless system. The 1, 2, 3, 4 is not really a grade. It is a equivalent to your competency within a certain subject. At least is what the board has been told. So we basically are in a gradeless system. I mean, there's another school within our SAU that got rid of 1, 2, 3, 4. They don't use any numbers or letters at all. It's simply text. Your kid is getting towards competency. Your kid is competent. Your kid exceeds competency. They're doing a great job. Homework. So we've gotten ourselves into this kind of like halfway through to fully competency-based education, or more than halfway in a lot of ways. But it's this teeters on that same conversation of are we all the way in, or do we want to consider grades? Do we want to consider that grade point system?
If you think about grades as communicating something to a parent, what are you communicating to a parent if you say your child got an 80, when in fact maybe they really did master the material, but they did none of their homework, so you sort of threw a low grade in there to average it all in.
Right.
And now you don't have, that has not been effectively communicated to you about what your child is learning and why they got that 80. But now yep, they got a 3 because they are competent. However, if you look over here on whatever you're calling it, work study habit of learning, if you look over here and it's being communicated to you that, yeah, even though they're competent, you know what, they're not doing all these other things. It's really about communication and information more than it is how can we throw this together and come out with an average.
Right.
Now, every parent, I still believe every parent, when the report card goes home, goes 4, well, that's an A, 3, that's a B.
That's our job,
2,
to
that's a
teach
That's
the
the
parents.
That's the frame of reference.
Right. That's
That's
exactly
exactly
what
what
Patty
it is,
said.
yeah.
This is where we have, and this is what we hear in the community. What the board hears in the community is, I don't understand what it is. Oh, I was graded on a 4-point. Like my high school was a 4-point system. So you get a 3, you get what is it? 3 is an 80. 3.5 is 90, and 4.0 is 95 and above.
And that's what every
So-
parent does. They just go
Ev-
through.
Every single parent is doing that in town,
Well,
and
not every
that's
single.
lots of it.
A good number. Quite a few.
I look at my kids' report cards and I quickly go, I look at the numbers, and in 9 seconds, down the list, I read the comments. Because yes, the comments to me carry more weight than the numbers do. But I don't even slow it, if I don't see a 2, I don't even slow down on the line. It's
Well, what I don't want to get into is a situation where the kids realize they can entirely game the system.
They do.
I know that they're going to.
That's why we're trying to get rid of that line.
And they're 6th and 8th graders. They want to game the system.
and they're
However, it's the encouragement of this transition towards a conversation-based solution, because it really comes down to it's a conversation that you're having with parents in regards to where their kids are, and how we relay that effectively. So working on this policy is just one aspect of it, and it's a lot of new language. It's a lot of new. It's a new thought process, and there will be confusion.
Can I ask a question of the 4 of you that are here?
Yeah.
Sure.
Should homework count? I just want. Do you think homework should count?
So I'm the art teacher,
well,
and I
okay.
don't give homework because I mean my homework might be something like bring in a can, if we're doing a recycled art project or something. But I think that when students don't do the homework, it is very evident when they go to take a summative.
I don't think it should be sorry. I was gonna say like a big percentage, 10% maybe.
But it needs to carry a little bit.
I think it should carry some weight.
I think homework on a lot of scales should carry weight for sure. And again, I think it does carry weight, now in theory it carries weight, but it carries weight very differently than a percentage that we're used to. It carries weight going forward. I look at it as, you have a student who, I've had many students who try extremely hard and will do every single homework assignment they can possibly do, but still never get that top-notch grade that they always want. And, I look at that student will be extremely successful because they put value in how important homework was to them and the work ethic they had into it. So, yes, homework is very valuable. It should have some weight. And
So yes.
yes, I think it should have lots of weight, but.
When I first got involved with this group, I was all hot on this idea of taking, and then I realized we couldn't do it without scope, but hot on the idea of taking their competencies and reporting those, but also having them compile into a percent, and then including the homework is like, I was thinking 25%, but the time was talked down to like 10 or 20%.
Right off the ledge.
Yeah, yeah, but
I was with you.
apparently that can't happen or it doesn't fit or whatever. But yeah, I would love to report out on the competencies. Your kid's getting a 3 in geometric whatevers, and right, and they're doing all of their homework. So that means that they've gotten like a reward, a 10% reward on their overall 90% score or whatever you want
Their
to call
math
their
grade.
math grade when you compile all those different competencies.
And I'm by no means saying I know the solution. I'm not an educator, right? I don't know the solution to the question, but I
you're
know
married to one.
I'm married to one. Right? She doesn't know the solution either because I keep asking her. But and this isn't necessarily this is the weeds. This policy.
It's not really a board and 4 teacher discussion.
I know. I know.
I just asked a question. Okay, I'll wait until it comes circles back around.
I'll make
I'll
one
reload my
quick
can.
comment and then we can move on. I've obviously stated that I believe it's baked in. The measure that you're providing, that 10% measure, is just a visibility thing. you're actually, that 10% is actually going to count as work. You're actually measuring work ethic. That piece is going to be counted under
Habits of
habits
learning.
of learning now. So that visibility that you have of that is now under there. The actual quantitative or qualitative part of homework, what they're learning from homework, that practice piece is going to be the summative, the other one, formative, thank you, the formative piece, and will show dividends when they do the summative.
All right.
That's what I mean by baked in. But
So this has been an ongoing big discussion
let's move on.
with this board for over a year, and it is a discussion that will continue with the administration. The way policies work is if there's a suggested change to a policy or there's a policy that's brought up, we never vote on a change the first time it's up. It gets brought back at least 2, if not 3 times. So we will take, at least I would propose that we take it under advisement with the suggestions and revisit this at our next meeting. So, anything else for the teachers while they're here?
How would you, trying as best you can to represent all of those school teachers, some language in there that did say, just laid out kind of what we just talked about, that teachers understand that differentiation of homework assignments as necessary is appropriate, and parents can expect that is, you know, or kind of what you were thinking of.
Kind of said it right there.
Yeah.
That language was like,
Parents can expect that homework.
Kind of says it right there, that line.
it says it.
Oh, it does it. Right. Right. Read the
Yeah. That's why it sounded so familiar.
Okay, I guess it does say that. So great. That's it.
So that would be the end. That's what I was suggesting, is to end it there, because that takes out the optional piece is what we're looking at.
Thank you.
Sounds like a great opportunity to make a run for it.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you guys. Thank you. See y'all on the 22nd.
Art.
Art curriculum.
I was going to say, the barbecue's not so.
No.
All right. Seeing nobody from the Deerfield Fire Department again.
Consent will be after
Right.
non-public.
Okay. So let's move infrastructure vote. What do we got for an infrastructure vote?
So Danny worked with Kristen on the infrastructure grant, and you had given permission to go after some more funding with that.
Correct.
And then Denny is thinking, I believe, that there needs to be a school board vote for the exact amount of the grant that she applied for. Is that what she was looking for? Do you know, Kristen, on the application?
I think because it was 30,000
Yeah.
or something.
Was it
Yeah.
higher than we had offered?
You didn't name a price.
Yeah, we did.
You just, I think, didn't
We did. We
Did
put a
you?
price on it.
Was it in the minutes? I missed that. What was it?
It was 25.
Oh, so maybe that's the issue.
Should we
I
just
don't know
need to
what's said a
recalculate
minute.
for the amount of-
So she's applying for 30, and we
yes.
match what, 10% or something?
20%.
20%.
So-
Okay, so $6,000.
How do you want the motion to sound?
What's it for?
Applying for.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, make your
I think
motion.
what happened was we had the conversation, we had the fire department and to talk about the walkie-talkies and the gentleman from the walkie-talkie conversation, they were talking about needing what's that, a receiver, but it was a,
Yeah, it's in between. Like, so if they can't reach, if the radios don't reach to a certain point, the receiver.
Repeater?
or repeater, yes,
So
to
that
install a
was-
repeater, which
Front-
made it more
Front
expensive.
lines or something?
And then we were talking about different bandwidths and things of that nature, and
And riveting.
so essentially the cost is higher than what they thought it would be.
So I'll move to approve the school safety grant for amount of 31.
Should we amend our previous motion?
Or however you want, it's a clerical thing, so.
We already have a motion that's approved.
So do you want?
I remember at 20. I think it's not in the minutes, but
So do you want to amend, so I move that we amend the original motion
to say that
to say an amount up to 31,000. Or the application up to 31,000. Because that's the new
That should
numbers,
work.
31K.
I think so.
That's the total.
I need a second.
Second.
Okay, discussion.
So the 31 is the total
Is
grant.
That's
the
right.
gross number.
Yeah, so we need to approve that. We're going to match 20% of the 31.
Everybody clear?
Does that need to be clarified in the language?
I think if the motion is allowing her to apply for,
Up to
then part of the rule is you have to
Yeah.
match 20.
Any other discussion? All in favor of the amended motion? Aye.
Aye.
All right. Before we get any further, I noticed that the PTO is sitting nicely in the audience. I was wondering if we could check in quickly with the PTO as our barbecue's coming up, and they help so much.
And I really only have one thing, for the main road sign, which I'll have to remember next year, not now, the last day of school, then I don't see you guys till August, now to do it, so I can get it approved by June, third class meeting.
Do you have it for us now?
I do, so can it be, the White family want it, and actually, they wanted, when she sent it out, she wanted it to be lightweight, like said, kind of like Elmo Butt, but then when you see it right now, it doesn't look so great. So she changed it. I was like, no, the first year, we can't have something like it. So she would like to name it Connor and Jessica's name. Jessica and Connor's name.
Anyone opposed to naming it Connor and Jessica's Lane?
Or
for
Jessica and Connor.
Jessica or Connor's Lane
This is for the year?
for the year.
And it's the road that goes up around the field.
I'm fine with it.
I'm fine. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Go ahead.
And then if you, the back to school barbecue is really good, but I did do the menu and the checklist for it. And break down all your names for volunteers and but it needs the grocery list, I have that, and fill in what I can bring in, and then if you guys just want this and see, like, I don't know who has the grill. I don't have-
Amy has the grill in her barn.
I don't know what you guys want to pop up, what are you gonna do for brains?
It's not gonna rain.
Okay, fair enough.
But what if it's sunny and
Have the cross country pop up, that I'm sure I don't know if that's right, I didn't need it.
It'll smell like.
I have TVC up to my house.
Okay.
Well, it's my-
And then we could set up close enough to inside that the people could hang out in the cafeteria.
The front quarter, they'll cook out there and then everybody eats in the gym.
The hair's just grown back on my arms, so I'm looking forward to running the grill for a while again.
Yeah, and you need barbecue tools.
We got some.
We already bought them. And enough propane to
Nice
last a year.
long.
Did you get long ones?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And are we feeding 400?
I think that we should plan on
Yeah.
having at least as many as we did last year.
I'm thinking maybe a
Isn't
little
it
more.
5?
I think more.
I thought it was 500
I think it went
something.
remarkably well last year, and the community liked it, and I think we'll see.
It'll mean even more people. Yeah, we're somewhere around 550 kids coming to school.
It was definitely well advertised this year. I've seen it everywhere.
Everybody's coming. So let's go 500.
Whole town.
Is one grill gonna be enough?
It's a big grill.
It's an 8-burner.
I'm just looking for an excuse to buy one for the house, so I,
Go ahead, man.
well,
Bring it down.
we could also ask about Parks and Rec's
they have one,
twin grill. They have one
the
that's
same
the same.
type of thing. Maybe we should look to do that, because we were working that grill pretty hard last year.
We were behind.
You got a little
Yeah,
behind at one point.
We got to start
Yeah.
earlier. We
Yeah.
got to cook a little earlier.
Yeah, so that may not be a bad idea. So we should either,
It'd be better to have it and not need it than.
yeah, I'd rather turn it off and push it to the side than, so if we could either maybe borrow one from Parks and Rec, or maybe I can use it as an excuse to borrow that flat top. if I just wanted.
So I think for the school, Trish, you're coordinating there.
I can do the shopping.
Okay.
If that's okay. Yeah, I'll have that. I know there was some things left in the freezer for it too, and there's like cups and that stuff. I can look through Ryan's closet. That's something.
It's Lisa's closet now.
This will be finalized. So switch it to 500, yes,
Yes.
and we'll need coolers.
I can just
Okay.
you-
Big one.
maybe a sign up, like
I did it. Right there.
I know that's a lovely sign up, but like a web based like, hey, this can
Sign
people
up
bring
units.
coolers?
No, we only-
I have a cooler.
right, then I'll sign you up.
There you go.
All right.
Look at that. Wasn't even on the web. That was the highest level of human
Who's
communication.
Who's gonna contact Parks and Rec about getting the grill?
I'm gonna see Nick on, I think tomorrow, for a meeting. You want me to ask him?
That would be great.
Okay.
Because we really, do you think we'll need 2 girls?
It would be.
Great last year.
We were behind. You remember how long that line was?
The social is
I
nice.
don't
if you
think
have
it does
enough
not mean
people.
that you didn't have, when it comes time to eat, you're gonna have that line. There was enough, people weren't waiting for food, they were just waiting.
No,
They were
they were
waiting.
waiting for food.
We were cooking.
Yeah.
We had to stop the line a couple of times.
We were cooking and
So I would rather have it than not need it. So
Is it a propane grill?
yes.
Yeah. All right. Anything else?
Ryan said he's got enough propane for the entire year.
Thank you, Andrea. Okay, so that wasn't on the agenda, but there we go. So we are now on to continuing business, board goals. Patty did a lovely job of drafting my horrible notes. Everybody take a quick look at them. Should we kind of address them? I don't feel like dealing with them tonight. Does anybody else want to table them until next time?
We can have it as a motion.
No, well, they're just
We
on
can
the.
just-
We can just say we'll talk about them next time.
Next meeting?
Everybody good?
If you have a chance, please look at them for suggested changes.
We did the policy. Informational items. We just did the barbecue.
We received the bus routes from Kelly at Dale, and she's wondering if you would like her to attend the meeting on the 22nd, or just submit the routes for your approval.
I am hoping to have a analysis. Thank you for sending that. I got it.
Good.
An analysis of where people live and what the most effective routes are next week for her. So she might want to come in. It's up to her.
hold it all off. Do that interactive math.
Yeah,
thing
we're gonna
you were talking
do
about.
it. I'm running it. So I've got the addresses. I've got the kids. I got the grades.
You need to give it to her ahead of time before the
Yeah.
meeting?
I'm not going to say this is what it is. I'm going to say here's a different way to look at it. It's her
You're gonna
business.
dork out with this, aren't you?
What?
You're gonna dork out on that?
I'm not going to. My wife is. She's got an extension she wants to try. We still don't have the Concord addresses though. Concord.
Yeah, Kathy's working on that.
Okay.
Mainly because we hired the person that used to do it to work here as
Oh.
a case manager. So
Alright.
we left a vacant spot.
Oops.
So Kathy's working on with the SAU to figure out who can get her that information.
Okay.
And then Kristen did prepare some informational items for you. We didn't put a principal's report on, but she has some things for you, if you don't mind.
Go right ahead.
I looked back at past minutes and I thought, oh, there's a principal's report right there. It's something from me. So we had a couple of days of Eureka training in Boston where a group of teachers went, our math specialists, and we had somebody from every grade level represented there. It was a great training. The teachers are really excited about the Eureka math. We have an upcoming training in August for any teachers that want to come that did not participate in the 3-day Boston trip. There's been a lot of literacy work done for grades K1, 2, 3 with Mrs. Davis this summer. They've been working on rubrics. They've been working on assessment calendars. So they've done a lot of really great work during the summer. We mentioned the safety plan. The grant had been submitted. Cameras have been put in. Bob is very excited about the cameras. If you want to stop by and see him one day, he'll be glad to show you, won't he, Trish? Oh, yes. And they really are cool. And we were talking about all the cameras that are around, and we happened to mention, did anybody think to put a camera in the front, at the front door? If we're going to have that door locked, we need to kind of know who's going to be coming in. So they did install a camera at the front door as well. We're in a conversation right now as to where exactly to put the monitor, but it's up and running. You can see it when you come in the office. You can see whoever's approaching the front door right now. We'll be meeting the emergency management team. I met John Harrington and Cindy and a couple of other really important guys that he was not there. Matt didn't make it and Gary didn't make it, but there were, we had just talked about different things that are happening in the town. They invited me to come over as well. So I got a lovely tour of the building, got down and met the kids at the Parks and Rec program, met Deb, who runs the Deb, right? Who runs the program. And they'll be over tomorrow to kind of talk about coordinating between school events and Parks and Rec events. And we'll also be meeting with the Emergency Operations Committee just to update our school safety plan. It has to be done every single year, so we're looking to do that in the next couple of weeks with the team and look at some things that are being recommended by the legislature to add to. There's a big mental health piece that they're looking at, recommending people add to their emergency plans. We had the New Hampshire Department of Labor visit. I wasn't sure exactly what she should do, what she was coming for, but we got a lot of 18 inches from the ceiling and a lot of fire retardant things that need to be sprayed with fire retardant if we want to be able to keep them in our school, in our classrooms. So that's something we're looking into right now.
How toxic is fire retardant?
She said not.
No, it's pretty standard in every school.
Okay.
Yeah. All of the new furniture that is passes inspection. It's the California has the highest standard in place, and so she checked all the tags and everything is up to speed for the new library furniture. Any new rugs that were ordered are also up to speed, but if not, then they'll have to be sprayed. That report will not be available to us until mid-September because they had to finish the whole SAU. I met with Jackie Trimmer and Brooke Petroselli about the website development. So they've been working diligently trying to move it over to the next platform using Google. She's been in touch with somebody to come take some pictures of the school to have those available on the website. And we just had an awesome 2-day leadership retreat with the whole SAU, all of the leaders in the, we've got Southern New Hampshire University. They had a great lunch spread for us. Brian was most excited about that. But it was great to meet everybody in the district. Everybody was very welcoming and really supportive and just makes me so happy to be here even more than I already was. We have a new teacher orientation coming up in 2 weeks. All our new people will be here as well as our new interns. We have quite a few new interns this year. So they'll be here. And I mentioned the Eureka training that will happen as well. And we have a group diligently working on the habits of learning for the presentation at the next board meeting. And for our CRB, the Curriculum Review Board, we needed a community member to serve the three-year term, and there were many people that reached out. So we've chosen somebody for that. And the last thing is Alma. We're in the process of validating the contacts for Alma so that we can move to the next level of releasing schedules, to start validating schedules so that we can be on board to roll it out for the first before September. So those are some updates that I have. It's been a busy 2 months here. Busy and great.
Other informational thing I'll throw out there is that there was a blurb that the communicator is coming back from Focus. So I don't know any details about that.
I got an email from the person who's going to be running it.
Okay.
She asked me to do a principal's page.
Excellent.
So I've emailed her back and I told her to stop by sometime this week and say hello. So yeah, I told her that a lot of people actually, that's one of the things people, what we used to have. And I told her a lot of people mentioned the newsletter that they used to have. And so I think people will be very excited to see that. She has a whole layout of what she wants to include from all over the community. So I think it's exciting.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Any other informational items? Public comments.
Just one thing on the homework policy. Concord High School has a crimson code, and it's 20% they have to come to class, if there's homework assigned, their textbook, if there's one in the classroom, a notebook or paper, and a pen or pencil. And the teacher at variance will grade them on a percentage what they come to class with, because they're not allowed to leave class to go to their locker like we allow them to do that here. So just something to maybe look into what Concord does, since that's our school of choice. It would be nice if we could start preparing them as 7th and 8th graders here to move on to Concord.
Awesome. Any other public comments? All right. As per NHRSA 91-A:3, 2, B, and C, I would entertain a motion to go into non-public.
So moved.
Second?
Ken?
Yes.
Jim, yes. Zach?
Yes.
Nate?
Yes.
At 8:56, we're going into non-public.
Seven.
So